Hi everyone, today I'll be taking a look at Russian railroads. Now you can see here this is the Ultimate Railroads box, which is essentially Russian railroads with all the expansion content, but for this video I'll only be looking at the original Russian railroads, which came out back in 2013. It accommodates 2 to 4 players and takes around 90 to 120 minutes to play. Before I get into my video, I want to give a shout out to the show's sponsor and the place where I actually bought Ultimate Railroads from, Kienda.co.uk, who are a great online retailer here in the UK, and if you check out my link in the show notes you can get 5% off your first order. But let's get started on the video. Okay, so Russian Railroads is a very high-scoring worker placement game, and this is what the main board is going to look like. And as you'd expect, you have a bunch of different worker placement spots you can go to. So you can see here, if I place 2 workers on this spot, then I get to move this piece 3 times up my personal board, which we'll touch on shortly. Now, most of these spots here are fixed. However, you do have these kind of modular tiles here, which act as a countdown timer to the end of the game. And depending on the player count, that is going to change. So you can see here in a 3-player game, you're going to start with 6 workers, but you play 6 rounds. In a 4-player game, you start with 5 workers, but you play 7 rounds. You're also going to have these bonus cards, which you can potentially unlock as the game goes on. And you're also going to have a ton of these train tiles, which are going to get added onto your personal player board and are a big part of the game. And these actually have 2 functions. So you've got the train function on one side, and you have this kind of factory function on the other side, which again is a pivotal part of the experience. And you also have some end game scoring cards here that you can unlock as the game develops, and also these ideas tokens where every player is going to have the same formation, and again these can potentially be unlocked as the game goes on to give you some pretty strong boons. But more importantly, each player is going to have their own personal player board that look like this, and these player boards are made up of 3 different railways. The first one being the Trans-Siberian, then you've got the Moscow to St. Petersburg, and then you've got the Moscow to Kiev line. And the general premise of this game is that you want to be sliding up these railway tracks as far as you can up these to get more and more points as the game goes on. But I'll touch a bit more on this later because it's quite a unique mechanism the way this works. And at the bottom of this player board, you're going to have this little industry track you can climb up as well to generate more points and bonuses. So let's talk in more detail how the scoring actually works in relation to these railways. So you can see here that a bunch of the worker placement spots are simply to move up those train pieces up a track. So you can see here, if I place 1 worker, I can move 2 of these wooden pieces up the track in any form I want. So I can move, say, 2 up the same one like this, or I could split them 1 and 1 like so. It's absolutely your choice. And the way this works is quite interesting because you can see here that the first piece is worth 0 points for each one I climb up. And as the game goes on and I reach these different checkpoints, like I've reached this green one here, then I will unlock my next piece and kind of start them at the beginning of the row, meaning that when I go to this worker placement spot, then I can start moving my green one up, and then for each green spot I move up, I'm going to start gaining 1 point each. And the same applies to all the different ones. So just as an example here, you can see that this piece is going to score nothing, then this one and this one is going to score 1 point because these points stop when it hits the next type of train track. So it's going to be 1 point, 1 point, and then it's going to be 2 points and 2 points, because you can see here that the red piece or the bronzy piece gets 2 points per spot you've moved up, and they stop where the next one begins. However, you do not score anything until you have a train covering those spots. So you're always going to start with a basic 1 train here on the Trans-Siberian line, which means that your first spot is going to be covered. But as the game goes on, you can end up acquiring these additional trains, which you're going to need in order to score things in the first place. You can see here that I've got the 5 plus this 1 piece, then I'm actually covered up to 6, meaning that anything 6 or below is eligible for scoring. So you really need to balance the 2, climbing up the tracks as well as having these trains to cover each spot on those tracks. Now the Trans-Siberian line is the only one that can cater to 2 different trains, and the other 2 lines can only have 1. And you can also see here that some of these unlock spots require certain prerequisites. So you can see here that this one needs to have this this train track to this spot, as well as being covered by a train, which it is at the moment, because I've got 5 plus 1 again. I'm going to be covered all the way up to here, and I've got my red piece here, which means I can unlock my next worker. And some of these spots do require have been covered by trains, and some of them don't. Like to unlock your next train pieces, you do not need the little train symbol there. So again, you can unlock them without having to worry about it being covered by a train. However, most of them do. So we've talked about these ones here, getting new the train tracks. You can get your new worker, These ones here let you take one of these bonus tiles, which are great, and we'll talk about what they do a bit later. And you can even get ones here where if you get this piece up here, you could double your points from the train track, or this one here lets you get these little kind of accumulating points as you climb. So let's talk about all the different worker placement spots on the main board. So all these pretty much work in the same way. Again, when you place a worker on that spot, you can move the corresponding track up your personal player board. However, you've got to bear in mind that say you're kind of stuck or trapped in between or behind another one, you cannot move that colour further. So you need to kind of make way to move your better tracks up. So you can't just, again, overlap another one. So again, these are all the different ones. Either move 3 spaces by placing 2 workers or 2 spaces by placing 1 worker. And these cannot be shared by other people. However, there is a spot down here where anybody can go to any amount of times where you can move your wooden piece or your green piece. And you've also got one here where if you place a worker and a coin, you can move up any 2 pieces of train or train track. And something I should mention as well is that if you run out of workers or if you want to use them, you can actually just spend gold coins or your money in order to take worker placement spots. So you can see here that this worker placement spot here requires 1 worker. I can simply put a coin on it rather than placing a worker on it. You can also choose to bid to take the first or second player marker, and turn order is very important in this game because you want to be making sure you're grabbing the best worker placement spots. And you've also got these spots over here, such as gaining new trains or the new factories. Now, when you go to those spots, you can have 3 different options. You can play 1 worker and get either. If that spot's taken, you can place 2 worker and get either, or you can place 3 workers and get 1 of each. Now, when you do that action, you are going to take the lowest available train and either place it on your board as a train, like so, again, which is a big part of the scoring because now I'm going to be covered up to the second spot, or you can flip it over and use it as a factory and plug it into the bottom of your board here, which means that you can now climb up this track without any obstacles and potentially get this bonus when you cross it. These next spots here correspond to that kind of industry track where you can climb up once, twice, or once and move a train piece once. Again, normally moving up this little spanner piece as you go and generating a points engine. Whenever you cross these spots here, then you will get the reward on it. Like you can see here, the first one is to gain a factory or a train. And you've got the final few spots here, such as gaining these multiplier markers, these times 2s, where you're going to take one, you're going to put it on your little Trans-Siberian line here, which means that anytime this spot scores, as in, at the moment being this red, the bronzy piece, it's going to score double. So that is actually going to be worth 4 points. You can put these as far as you want, all the way up to the end of the track to get those huge scoring multipliers. And additionally, you can get 2 money by placing a worker, or this one here lets you sacrifice a worker in order to get 2 more. Also, every round there's going to be these temporary spots where you can place a worker and get these bonuses, which are normally just an improved version of the existing ones, such as gaining a ×2 marker and getting 5 victory points. So just an improvement on that one there. Or this one here where you can climb up that industry track and gain 3 victory points. And you can also see that there's one here. There's always going to cost a coin to buy. And when you go to this spot, you're going to take this tile and it's going to be a new unique worker placement spot that only you can use. And these, again, they're normally really good and they're just like these ones here. However, in the previous round, they were available to everybody, but once somebody buys them, then they're only going to be available to you. And additionally, at the end of the game, whoever's got the most of these tiles is going to get 40 points, and second most 20 points, and anyone else other than that is going to get nothing. So once everybody has exhausted all their worker or spent the additional money, and when it comes to your turn, you are going to flip over your card depending on the player order you're in. So let's say I was the first player, I'd flip over my card and get no additional points. However, as the different player order goes on, if you're later in turn order and you pass, you end up gaining more and more victory points. So this is actually quite an advantage at sometimes to be later in the turn order. And again, once everybody's done, you're going to go through the scoring method, which is to calculate the score on each of your tracks and also score the points for your industry track, and obviously add that on to your score tally. And at the end of 6 rounds, the player with the most victory points will be the winner. So let's take a closer look at the personal player boards. We've already covered unlocking the new track pieces, but you can see here that you can unlock new workers to deploy. You can also see here that at some point you can reach these idea tokens, which are extremely powerful, which lets you use one of these bonus markers, and everyone's going to start with the same little formation here, where you can place a new spanner on your industry track there to basically score that track twice if you manage to push them both up, and even get these bonuses twice if you hit that spot. You can take these idea cards or end game scoring cards, and these are all really powerful, such as just getting you like the total value of all your 4 highest trains. Again, that's a really good amount of points there if you build towards that, or even taking these bonus cards, which will kind of give you like a level 9 train, or take a factory and move twice on that track. You can get a special wooden worker, where if you place that on a spot that lets you move your wooden piece, you can move it an additional space. You can get your own little personal helper here, which lets you move any 2 tracks, which is a really powerful one, or this one here that gets you a ×2 token, a placement up the industry track, and to move one of your wooden pieces. The other ones let you move any 4 train tracks. You can upgrade your scoring tile here so that you can score more points for all the different varieties of train track that you move. I get 4 coins. I get 2 of these key actions, and these key actions are really good. And not only do you get them from these tiles, but you can also get them by reaching the end of each of these tracks. And they can either let you move a wooden piece and one of your choice, or just get a 10-point swing there. Additionally, you can place this token here, which is one of my favourite ones, where you place it on your Kiev line down here, and when you reach that spot, you get an additional 20 points. So that's a really good strategy to go for. You can get 4 ×2 markers, or even just move 5 spaces up the industry track. Okay, so let's get into my thoughts on Russian Railroads, which I have to say is definitely one of those games that leave you feeling very satisfied, because at the end of the first round, you've not really done much. You're getting a few points here and a few points there. By the end of the second round, you might be getting, say, 20 points. And then by the third round, you're getting 50 points per turn. So it really does have that really cool like crescendo and game arc, which makes you feel like you're achieving things and getting better and better as the game develops. Additionally, I really love the way that all the different factors of the game synergize with each other, and you have to spin a lot of plates in order to get what you want done. Like, for example, you need to get the trains to make sure that you're covering up the train spots which you've actually moved up in the first place, because you can invest all the time in the world to push these things up. But again, if you're not covered by a train, they're going to be worth absolutely nothing. At the same time, you want to be spending time to get these double tokens, because that's going to massively increase your output when it comes to scoring at that particular railway. You need to invest time in basically a dud movement just to move this one up to get it out of the way so you can create more space for the other ones. You want to be unlocking the workers along the way. You want to be hitting these ideas tokens because they are really powerful if used at the right time, and you want to be making sure you're unlocking as many of those as possible. And additionally, you might want to sacrifice thing in order to do another one, because if you get this spot up here, then you can end up doubling this railway line, or even this one here, which just gives you a really easy way to generate a little points engine, especially if you unlock one of these tokens beforehand. So lots of different things you can do here, and just a ton of different ways to gain points. I also love the way these factories work, or this industry board, because they just offer a great amount of points just by pushing this along the track. However, I do like the way that you have these obstacles along the way, and you have to go to that factory spot in order to get a new one onto your player board. Because if you don't do so, you're going to hit that dead end and not be able to go any further. However, you're only able to take the lowest value train as you go, and that bonus there might not be the one that you're looking for. The main board itself is also fantastically weighted, because it might look initially like there's a ton of spots here to go to. You're always going to have a contingency and be able to take a good alternative. However, they do very quickly get swallowed up by the other players, particularly if you want the same thing, of course. There's only one option here to move the 3 spots with the 2 workers, and before you know it, they're going to get gobbled up, especially earlier in the game, because everyone wants to be moving their wooden pieces up. And that's what makes turn order so important, because you might want to sacrifice your turn. Of course, there will be other people here in order to secure first place next round. However, there is that kind of double-edged sword there, where going first is great because you're going to secure the spot you want. However, if you go later in the game, when it comes to passing, you're going to get a lot more points. I really appreciate how different the scoring mechanism in this game is. The idea of climbing up these different tracks, but the kind of tokens on those tracks vary in quality as the game goes on, which will unlock you bigger and bigger scoring. I think that's fantastic, and I love seeing new things. And yeah, this game is 9 years old, but it's completely new to me. This is kind of one of those things where, this is like the selling point of the game. There's a ton of worker placement games out there, but this is what really does differentiate it from a lot of the other ones. And it might take an extra minute or two to explain it to other players how it works, not like it's complex, but because it is so different to anything else. But that does almost tie in to my, I'll say criticism, it's more of an observation, that because of the nature of the scoring here, of always building upon your previous engine, kind of getting bigger and bigger, it's quite difficult to make ground up if you do end up falling behind another player earlier in the game, especially if you know that player is not likely to make many mistakes. Now, it is doable through some very clever, efficient play, but again, because everybody is always kind of compounding on their previous income, then squeezing that gap between you does become quite a difficult task to overcome. I love the way that the game gives you a ton of options to mull over and that all of them feel good. It's not like, well, I have to take this action, otherwise I'm going to get stuck with a bad action. It's like, no, I want to take this amazing action, but if I don't, I'll probably get this other good action. And I just love the way that feels. You really want to climb this track. I really need to move my pieces up my own railways. I want to get these new personal worker placement spots because they're fantastic and nobody else is going to be able to use them. So yes, so many different things that you need to consider here, but you don't want to spread yourself too thin. And you probably want to go down one or two of these different pathways to get maximum points for doing so. So from a standpoint of the mechanisms and the meaningful decisions you make throughout the game, there really isn't anything I can criticise here. It works like clockwork. Just a very finely tuned design there, again, with the only observation that if you do fall behind somebody, it is difficult to make up that ground. And that also ties into the balancing of the game. I haven't played this a ton of times, of course. I know there's people who've played this probably hundreds of times. But from my brief experience with the game, it does feel like all the different pathways you can take are viable paths to victory. It doesn't feel like there's one that you should neglect and one that's overtly worse than the others, which I think is I love it when I have confidence in design that you can try something different each time and still have a good chance of winning. I think considering the depth of gameplay here, that the time it takes is actually really good. You are looking at around 90 minutes to play, maybe slightly more than that with that fourth player count. But I think the game is actually very easy to teach, apart from maybe, again, taking that extra minute or two of care to explain how this personal board works. But other than that, everything is very intuitive. I do feel like the replayability with Russian Railroads is decent. You've got different modular kind of characters that come out each time. You can go for different bonuses, and just the way that the trains come out and different things like that are going to change your experience game after game. But I do love the fact that if you want to, you can start injecting all that additional material into it, which from my brief reading of the rules doesn't seem like it changes the gameplay too much, but it does just kind of play with the order of these player boards each time, just to give you some variation there, to make sure you're not always going to do the same thing. The game also appears to scale really well. Of course, there are some minor rules here, changes here when you do play at that 3 or 4 player count. But on the reverse side of the board, you do have a 2-player map, which closes off some of the spaces to keep it tighter. And I have only played this at 2 and 3 players at the moment, and at both of those player counts, it plays exceptionally well. And I don't even think I have a preference over the other. And I'm also really happy with the production of this version. I've not played the original Russian Railroads. Again, this is the Ultimate Railroads version, but it does have this kind of simple Euro feel to it. It's not overdone. You've got your traditional meeples. The card quality is more than adequate, nice and strong tiles there. They're going to hold up really well. All the cards and things are fine. They are linen finished cards, not like you need to handle them too much. Everything fits on the board nicely, not too big, not too small, and is generally average pieces as you'd expect with a game of this type. So yeah, no issues at all with the production. Okay, so let's get into my final thoughts on Russian Railroad. So I'm certainly at a point now where worker placement games have to be something special for me to, really get engaged with it. And this one certainly is that. I was completely enamored with this design, which is strange because on the face of it, this part of the game itself, the worker placement part, is very simple. All the spots are very straightforward, and what they do, just move the pieces along, get this or get that. However, the kind of tenseness to grab these spots is absolutely huge. Additionally, I love the different scoring methods and things you can go down. You know, am I going to do this? Am I going to do that? Am I going to get my best pieces on here and get those huge multipliers? Do I need a train right now to make sure I'm doing that? Am I going to be pushing my industry board here? Maybe I'm going to get that bonus token to get 2 things on my industry board to get a whole bunch of points that way. I want the best factories. Something I didn't mention is that if you replace certain trains on your board here, because you can upgrade them, they go back into the factory pool, which leaves it open to other people to take, and they might really want that type of factory. So yeah, everything here has a huge kind of ramifications to the choices you're making. The satisfying turns you get is just huge. It gives you all those dopamine hits, especially when it comes to scoring at the end of the round, where again you can really see how you are building a foundation of getting more and more points as you go, and every single turn just feels great. An immensely deep experience for only 6 rounds, and you're looking at an hour and a half to play this one, which I think is spot on for me. And in fact, I think I wouldn't even be surprised if this was, say, a 2-hour game in length. I would still feel very content to bring this one out to the table because the gameplay really does warrant it. So yeah, extremely impressed with Russian Railroads, and for a rare exception, I'm actually completely excited to try the additional material for it. You know, as of recent years, I've kind of got turned off the whole expansion model. You know, always wanting to upgrade stuff or add new material into your games. But this one, I think if it stays true to this simple mechanism, which I think it does, and just plays around with the boards a bit, then I'm really excited to see what the game has to offer. But in its own right, just the Russian Railroads in isolation is truly an outstanding worker placement game that I could not recommend enough. So those are my final thoughts on Ultimate Railroads. Strong recommendation from me, and a worthy earner of my Elite Shield, which is my highest commendation a game can get. Just very happy to have this one in my collection.